Yo, what's up, guys? What's up, guys? Welcome in. I gotta mute. Okay, it's muted. What's up, guys? What's up, guys? Welcome in. A lot of you have wanted to know my story, so I'm gonna start telling y'all my story. We're gonna tell y'all the story today. We're gonna start from the beginning and just start telling you the story. I think that it is important that we talk about like how we got here and how I got here and how my journey played out and played into all of this. I'm just gonna share this out real quick. Perfect. Let's do it that way. Let's go back here. All right, guys, we back. What's up, guys? All right, let's tell y'all the story of me. So many people have asked about my story. They always say, we don't know who you are. We don't know much about you. So I figured now would be the time to start sharing my journey from conditioning, fears, traumas, and beliefs to how I got to where I am now. And I'm going to do my best not to miss out on anything. And I will say it was a rough journey, right? Some of you have seen a glimpse of kind of what I've went through, but not all of what you've went through. And I hesitated on telling this story because I have siblings and parents. And so I never wanted to tell the whole story. Like I always felt like they needed the opportunity to speak their version. But I'm going to tell you from my perception of what I seen and what I went through. So I can remember being younger. Let's start off when I was younger. So the first encounter is something that I remember, and I can't believe I remember this, but I can remember being about 9 months old, and I was jolted back to this point. At 9 months old, I remember being on the porch. I remember my first words. So on the porch, we were at a family get together, and I remember seeing this cloud fly really low. And when this cloud flew by, I remember speaking the words. I'm gonna say I spoke it to some family relatives. I'm not gonna tell you who it was. And I remember saying, look, there goes God. That was the first memory that came back to me when I started remembering. So I remember that we don't forget. So I actually feel like when I was born remembering, but throughout my life, I actually conditioned myself to forget. Like no one conditioned me to forget. I conditioned myself to forget because of when I started remembering and remembering things and different way things were and different events that happened. I think it actually scared me. I was born, my mom, I love my mom to death, and it was her journey. I tell people this all the time: the journey your parents play is the journey that they were supposed to play. We picked that journey for them to play for us, right? So being born addicted to a drug was not an easy start in life anyway. So we were already considered as statistics. Most likely we wouldn't make it. We're going to need this. We're going to need that. It never was an odd against me. 1222 on the time, by the way. It was never an odd against me. It was never something that held me or something that kept me stagnant, right? It was just a part of my journey that was there for me to tell the story. So being born addicted to a drug and then coming at 505 on that time and then coming into life the way that I did was so interesting to me. Anyway, so at 9 months old, I had that encounter. And then again, as I grew up, apparently I used to, and I can remember, I say apparently, but I can remember seeing things from a young age, seeing things like passed on relatives. I can remember describing them and asking my family about it. And they were like, "You just seen a picture. Well, where's a picture at?" Now, keep in mind, I think there's only like one baby picture of me, and my grandmother has it if she still has the piano sitting on her piano. But there are not very many pictures of me out there. I mean, there are a few, not many that I've seen, maybe from like parties and stuff, but there's not a lot of pictures of me out there as a kid. Anyway, so growing up with a mom that was addicted to a drug, I was naturally raised by my great aunt, and my great uncle. I can remember be growing up on a farm. Like as I grew up, I was my aunt and my uncle was a farmer. They went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday night. They went to Bible study. Say every revival, we went to a revival. Like I remember all that, but I never fit in. It didn't fit with me. It didn't sit in my soul to where like I needed to be there. But I would go because I was a kid and I had to do what they said. Of course, normal kid, the fluff, all that good stuff played in a factor into that. But it just never sat right in my soul. Like every time I would go to church, I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like the information was relevant to me. Now, I will say there were times that I went that some truth would come through and it would perk my interest. And I'd be like, oh, that was like a really good message today. But what I noticed about those messages would be those are the messages that were about forgiveness, unconditional love, standing in your power, taking your journey. Those messages always resonated with me, but other things never really resonated with me. So I would just be in church, that bad kid talking, getting in trouble, having to spit out my gum, asking for candy, just whatever I could do to stay out of trouble. So I do remember that very part. And I remember my aunt and my uncle. But I also remembered that I was at one point in time kidnapped by a man who wanted to stop me for whatever reason. Never know to this day. I'll never find that man. I even thought about putting out a TikTok post and saying I was kidnapped as a baby and I'm looking for a guy in this city who would have taken me. And my mom was this person and she came and got me. But I was like, what could he possibly tell me that I don't know, right? I think I have all the information to that. But anyway, so growing up with my great aunt and my great uncle, it was some things that I struggled with in my life. Like my father lived next door to me, but he was not really a father of niceness that I can remember. He kind of had like, sometimes he would say he was my dad, other times he would say he wasn't my dad. I watched him like date this woman, treat her daughter like his kids. It was a lot of that. It was a lot of manipulation into the mind, and it just never really flowed with me. Like he never felt like the father that I needed. So, but I had my uncle who was like a father figure who taught me how to hunt, fish, garden, take care of animals, work on cars, work on plumbing, electrical. He taught me the things that he knew how to teach me, and that stuff resonates with me today. And then I had my aunt who taught me how to cook, understanding cleaning and hygiene and all of that stuff. So I had great role models in that asset, along with my grandmother. My grandmother and my great aunts, they were older, right? These were not younger people raising us. This was your big mamas. This was your like the older generation. Like their kids are 40, are grown, and we're growing up. So they raised their grandkids. So these are like my grandmother is my great grandmother. Well, she's my grandmother. No, I'm gonna take that back because my dad is her mom. But my dad is in his 70s. So imagine how my grandmother would have been during that time. So, but they did the best they could. We would have family functions and stuff. Anyway, so growing up, I created like a lot of conditionings for myself. A lot of because I started building these walls around me because I was different. I was getting picked on. Um, I had the braces, never had really the straight teeth. I was getting picked on for the way I looked, the way I talked, the way I dressed. It was so much of that going on in life that I started conditioning myself. I started to close myself off. But I was good at something. I was like, what am I good at? Like if there was a problem that someone couldn't figure out, my mind, the way my mind worked, I could look at it and figure it out. I can remember being a kid and my mom bought this rocking horse for her grandchild. And they had the directions and they still put it together wrong. And I just happened to get up in the middle of the night. I don't know what I was doing. I probably went to the kitchen to get something to drink. I always get up and get something to drink in the middle of the night. Anyway, so I remember going downstairs and seeing the frustration and I looked at it and I said to my mom, well, if you do this and this and this way, then it works. All you need to do is put it together this way. She was like, well, show me. So I took it apart and I put it together and it worked. She was like, thank you. But that's how my mind worked. Even with computers, I could look at a computer and know what's wrong with it. Okay, this, and this was wrong with it and fix it. So I was always able to solve problems just by knowing how they worked. So as I grew up, I lived with and I was probably 13, 14 in that age. But growing up in my younger years, living with my aunt and my uncle, it was always, I was different. Everybody knew I was different. Everybody was always praying over me. Let's pray over you. Let's baptize you. I think I was baptized like 3 times, like baptizing me, praying over me, speaking in tongues over me. Like it was almost like they saw me as like evil at times, is how I felt. Everybody with my great aunt and my great uncle, they saw a light in me that I didn't see, and they loved me unconditionally. And I do mean unconditionally. So my Mary had a twin, my Martha. My Martha got really sick with cancer, and she was on hospice. And I remember, and I'm probably 7, 8 years old at this time, and I remember when she died, because I was asleep and she died in the room next to us. And I knew she had died. And that night before I went to bed, I remember telling my Aunt Mary, I tapped her on the shoulder. She said, yes. I said, hey, Mary, Aunt Martha has died. She's like, no, she's not. She's asleep. I said, no, Aunt Mary, Martha's passed. I know she's passed. She's not here with us anymore. And she said, well, how do you know? I said, because every night I say to her, good night, Aunt Martha. And she says, good night, I love you. Tonight I say, good night, Aunt Martha. And she said nothing. And then I see her energy. She was like, okay, she's not dead though. She's just, maybe she's asleep because she's tired. I said, no, Aunt Mary, Martha has passed. So we went to sleep, and about 4 o'clock that morning, I was woken up. My Mary would get up at 4, make biscuits and breakfast. That way, we all had something to eat for breakfast, old school. So I remember waking up at about 4:30 that morning, and then my Mary was just crying and crying and crying. And I remember saying, "Hey, Martha passed," and she was like, "Yeah, you knew." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I knew. I knew last night." And she just hugged me. She just embraced me. She didn't tell me I was wrong. She didn't tell me I was crazy. She just embraced me. And that was also another sign of like, oh my gosh, what's different about me? And then I can remember, and I jumped ahead a little bit. So I'm going to go back. Probably one of the times I did live with my mom, I was probably like 5. My mom was on drugs still. So it was really my siblings taking care of us. And I remember when she was home one night, I was laying in the bed asleep, and I got up because I wanted a drink. That's always the catalyst. I always get up because I'm thirsty. Anyway, so I got up and I went to turn the light on in my bedroom, and the light didn't come on. And then I turned around and looked, and I could see my body, but I could also see these beings following me and working on me. And I was like, and I freaked out. I ran back and jumped in my body, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. My whole body wasn't moving. I was trying to move my fingers. I was trying to scream. Nothing would come out of my voice. And I finally got like a scream out. My mom comes running in there. She has the Holy Oil blessing me. Blah, 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 blah. But as I'm laying there, I see these beings with my physical eye, and they're not going anywhere. They're looking at her with the head tilt, like, what is she doing? And that was a time I knew something was different. It wasn't shortly after that. My mom went back, she relapsed, and I went back with my great aunt and my great uncle, and my brothers and sisters. They all went their ways. So fast forward back. So my Martha passed, and I knew it. So that night, I was laying in the bed, and I was bedroom, which was my Martha's bedroom. Anyway, so my Martha's bedroom. So I would sleep in the bed with my Mary. And I remember being asleep, and before I go into bed, I remember sitting up looking in the kitchen, and I looked down the hallway and because you can see the kitchen directly where the bed was. You can just look and see the kitchen. And I said to Mary, Mary, there's a bright light in the kitchen. There's this beautiful bright light in the kitchen, and they want your attention. And at that moment, my Mary said, you're never crazy. You don't see that. That's not true. She rolled over. She said, that's not, you're right, Martha. I said, oh, she was wants you to go with her because y'all are twins, right? She's like, yes, but I'm not ready to go. I can't leave yet. So she said, let's roll over and let's go back to sleep. So I looked at the light, and I could see this beautiful light in the kitchen. The house was pitch black, and the light felt sad. I could feel the energy from the light. It was like she was sad that my Mary wouldn't go with her. And I remember looking at the light saying, I love you. Have peace. And the light went away. I rolled over and I went back to sleep. But what stood out for me with that story is my Mary never said, you're crazy. You're not seeing that. She knew what I was seeing. She knew the things that I saw and what I saw. Um, so sorry, you guys. So that was another staple in my life of realizing, okay, I have these gifts. I'm seeing things like we call it the veil, but I was seeing things beyond the veil already. I could already see spirits. I could already see galactic beings. They were already in my presence, already in my energy. And so as I started to move on through life, some things started happening. Like I'd be outside. I don't have any memories of really being outside playing. I don't have any memories of what I would do on the farm, any memories of what I would do, at my married house. Like I have none of those memories. Like my cousins talk about, like, do you remember when we used to play kickball? I don't remember. I have none of those memories. And those aren't bad things. It just wasn't for me to remember. It was like as I was growing, the things that weren't important was instantly moved out of my energetic field. And the things I needed to remember which was who I am, my alignment with who I am. So as I got older, things like this went on. Well, about 12 years old, my auntie had got sick. I had began to feel like I was angry, right? I didn't know why I was angry. I was angry. I was feeling lost. I was tired of being picked on. I was tired of my cousins picking on me. Like I had just had enough. So I started to lash out as a typical kid. And across the street from me was one of my aunts that lived, and she actually had communicated with my mother. She talked to her. She had her information. So she called her. And this time my mom was clean. She was like, you need to come get your child. She's out of control. And there's nothing, your Aunt Mary and Uncle Jack are too old. Because you got to think in this time, they're in their 80s. These are my great aunts and my great uncle that's raising me. Even though keep in mind, my father lived next door to me. But this is who's raising me. So, and again, we're still having this battle with him. That's not my child. That's not my child. That's not my child. Okay, cool. Whatever. So I knew him as Uncle Willie. And the times he did interact with me, it would be like so negative, like you're gonna be just like your mother, you're never gonna be anything, you're not gonna be good for anything. It was never a positive experience. I don't ever remember him coming over helping me with homework. I don't remember him picking me up from school. I don't remember him buying me anything for Christmas. To this day, he texted me on my birthday and didn't know it was my birthday and had to tell him it was my birthday. That was kind of the trauma that I had around my father. It was that you had the opportunity to be my father, but you never chose to be my father. You chose everything but to be my father. So it was a lot of forgiveness in there that I had to let go of because again, that was his journey that I chose for him to play for a reason. So moving on. So about 12 years old, my mother came and got me. Now keep in mind, my mom and my sisters and my brother, they're these city living people, right? I'm an overall wearing flannel shirt, boot wearing country little girl. So cool. All right. Cool. So my mom comes and gets me. How she comes and gets me has to be like the most epic way. My mom is so dramatic when she does things. She comes Christmas. She has 3-4 bags of like stuff for me, Christmas presents, because I really didn't get anything for Christmas either. And I guess my aunt told her that. I don't know. But anyway, there's 3 bags full of stuff for me for Christmas. They're all dressed up. Their hairs are fancy. They're in these Jordans and Grant Hill shoes. And if you're old enough to know what a Grant Hill shoe is, that means you're pretty old. And that's telling my age. And so here she comes. Boom. And I do not want to go. But I knew something in me was telling me I was going to have to go. Um, so I opened my Christmas presents. We got all of my stuff packed up, and I never forget the sadness in my aunt's eyes when I had to go. I never forget the sadness in my heart when I had to go. And my mom took me away. But my auntie fought for custody of me. She fought for me. She got a lawyer. We went to court, and I remember being told what to say on the stand because I was old enough to testify, and I knew no better. And so I said what I was told to say on the stand, and I never forget the look on my auntie face. But the promise to me was made was that they would bring me back anytime I wanted to see my aunt if I just said what they wanted me to say. I never said what was in my heart, what I knew. But I do know now that every journey we take is for a reason, and that was a journey I had to take for a reason. But it took me years to forgive myself for that, And when my auntie died, she came to me and I was like, I love you and I'm sorry. She was like, baby, that was the journey. I needed peace. And I didn't realize I needed peace because my time of raising kids was over. I needed peace to just be myself and love and have just rest for myself. So after she passed, I got that forgiveness. I was able to forgive myself. But through the processes, so I go to live with my mom, and then my whole wardrobe changed. I'm losing my overalls, my boots are gone, my flannel shirts are gone. I'm in like the name brand Levi jeans. I got Jordans, I got Grand Heels, I got all the things that are conditioned to the world that we think we need. And so now I'm leaving the unconditional love and I'm going into the ego. So this is my transition into the ego of the conditioning and the attachment to the outside world, because that's what I had with my mom.